We're hearing this Mamar Lehavin Inyan Rosh Chodesh from the Rabbi Marash, using the Hasidic Heritage series. It's called Feminine Faith, and we're on page 43. And basically what he explained was that even those people who claim that they don't believe means they don't believe in the existence of Hashem. They believe in the existence of Hashem. They also believe that Hashem created the world, but they believe that Hashem abandoned the world, so to speak, meaning that it would be degrading to say that Hashem occupies himself with what goes on here in this physical world. So therefore, they believe that Hashem is in the spiritual realms, and that's where he is involved in making things happen, whatever happens up there. In terms of what happens down here, that he gave over to the either whether the angels or the constellations, different forces of nature, that they're responsible for what goes on down here. And that's what Paro said, that I don't know Havaya. And therefore he said that he can do whatever he did until now. He doesn't just recognize, he doesn't believe that Moshe Rabbeinu is coming in the name of Hashem, that he has anything to do with managing things down here in this physical world. But the truth is, he explained that Havayna L'Kimo one, which means really it's Hashem. Hashem is in essence in charge of everything up there, in charge of everything down here, and not just in general, but even all the details. Even though Hashem in essence is one, nevertheless, he created a world, and the world has in it millions and billions and infinite details, and Hashem is involved in all the details in providing every single detail in this world with what it needs as a detail. And that's really the meaning of Hashgacha Pratis. So we're going to take a little detour. So we'll stop here at this first paragraph on page 43. And we're going to go over this sheet that I gave out. Is from a mimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe. As you have both the Hebrew from the original, where it tells you where the mimer is from. It's Sefer Maimarim of the Frierdiker Rebbe, Tofrei Tzadik Vov, meaning a mimer that he said in the year 1936. And and the English translation here. So the term that we all use freely is Hashgacha Pratis. But there's really a lot involved in that. It's a very huge subject in Chassidus, and that is Hashem's supervision. Even Torah Jews who believe in Hashem and believe that Hashem is in charge, that Hashem is managing everything, but to what extent is it? In other words, there are even Torah sources, mainly before the Baal Shem Tov, but Torah sources that say that Hashem is in charge of general things, but not really to every specific detail. And the Baal Shem Tov's teachings was, no, Hashgacha Pratis means that Hashem is involved in every single detail that happens in this world. So for example, there's a possibility that Hashem wants something to happen, something big, but once that Hashem does something for the big thing to happen, other things happen by the way. This is the example that comes to my mind, is in the story in Gemara. There was somebody called Yosef Moiker Shabbos. It means Yosef, the one who always appreciated and honored the Shabbos. And he made sure that every week to find and to buy the biggest fish you can possibly get. That was his specialty. So where he lived, there was either a nobleman or some sort of a ruler, very wealthy, and he had a dream where he saw in the stars that all his wealth is going to be transferred to, this story is in Gemara, will be transferred to this Jew, Yosef Meker Shabbos. And he was very worried. He saw that this is going to be happening. How could he prevent it from happening? So he decided to sell all his land, all his forests, all the things that he had. With all that money, he bought one huge precious diamond that's worth millions of dollars, and he made sure to hold on it all the time. So there's no way that he can get his wealth. And how did he make sure? He took this diamond and he sewed it into his hat. And he always had his hat with him. So the Gemara says one day he was walking over a bridge near the water, and the sun started to blow so strong that his hat flew off, fell into the water, and it was gone with the diamond. So, of course, he was very, very upset, but one thing made him happy, that it didn't go to Yosef Merkah Shabbos. At least that Jew didn't get my wealth. Thank you. So the Gemara says what did happen was that week he went fishing and he found a big fish. And when his wife opened the fish, she found this diamond that's worth millions of dollars in it. Of course, he had no idea where it's coming from. And of course, it belongs to him because who knows who the owner is. And and not only that, well, we're not going to go into the halacha part of it, but he had this diamond, which means what he saw did become fulfilled. So I'm using this as an example. Imagine, here's a story where Hashem wants somebody's hat to fly off into the water. It should be swallowed by a fish, and then Hashem arranges that Yosef Merkah Shabbos finds the fish and he becomes wealthy. What about everything else that happened? When a wind like that blows, not only a hat flies, a lot of things go flying, right? Is that also Hashgacha Pratis? No, the Hashgacha Pratis is that this person's hat should fly and the diamond should end up in his hands. But everything else that goes along with it, once there's a wind blowing, automatically things have to happen. Rosh Hashanah says no. Hashgacha Pratis means that even though that's the general intention, but every single detail that happens as a result of this wind, every leaf that blows in the wind, every blade of grass that goes back and forth from the wind, and any other hat that goes flying, all that is Hashgacha Pratis. And by the way, if you don't see things that way, then Hashgacha Pratis can't really help as much when it comes to feeling positive. Why? Because you could say, this happened to me, and someone's going to say, no, but Hashgacha Pratis. Maybe Hashgacha Pratis was something bigger that's supposed to happen, and I'm a byproduct of that Hashgacha Pratis. So really what happened to me is not Hashgacha Pratis. But if we understand Hashgacha Pratis means no, every single detail, then no matter what happened, and no matter what the reason was, if I, and with a certain consequences for me in that process, that detail is also Hashgacha Pratis. So I'm going to read it in the Hebrew, and if anyone wants, you can follow me in the English. So it starts where it's underlined on page 119 in the Hebrew. It goes like this: Hine, Kol HaNevraim Shalamata, all the creations here in this physical world, Kulam Nechlokim B'Daled Madregas Kelim, they're all included in 4 general categories, which is Deimim, Tzameach, Chai, Medaber, the inanimate, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and the human kingdom. These are 4 general categories, but Asher Kol Echad Midalad Elu, each one of these 4 general categories, Kelim, they include, page 120, Minim Rabim Ribui Mufli, tremendous amount of different kinds within each of the 4 categories, which means there's every one of these 4 has so many different kinds of it. For example, Ademim, even things that are inanimate. Further, Ribui Mini Offer, thank you very much. There's so many different kinds of earth. When you're going to plant, there's land that's better for planting, land that's better for building, a different kind of earth, avonim, different kind of stones, matras, different kind of metals. So they're all inanimate, but they're all different kinds. We call echad mehem atzma, and each one of these kinds is minim rabim, minim, which means if we talk about stones, in the category of stones, there are many different kinds of stones. L'chol min prati, and even in each individual single kind or species, there are many details. So there's one kind of species, let's say in the animal kingdom, and in that itself there are many details. The same applies to the plant kingdom, animal kingdom, and human kingdom. Asher called echad ve'echad ma'aprotim amprotim. Asher b'min echad. All these details. Yesh lai chayis miyuchad. That means Hashem provides that particular creation with a very specific, precise kind of light flow that's designated for that kind. In other words, the reason why a bird is the way a bird is because the life energy that Hashem gives to it is also different. And the reason why in the bird species, this bird is different than other birds because their life flow is different than other birds. And the same thing is in this bird itself, or the details of the bird, the wings and this part of the bird and that part of the bird, is because there's the life flow that's in it is also designed to provide it with all these details. Asher Chayisahi, this life flow that Hashem gives it, Hamagadla Umanhigay, that's what makes it grow, and that's what leads it, L'chol Prata Inyanov, and that's what's really responsible for everything that goes on. Miyayim Hiyaseit, from the moment that it begins to exist, Adrega Ha'echrein L'chayav, till the last moment of its life, where it's no longer there. And to give an example, let's give an example from the plant kingdom. Hine, in the plant kingdom itself, the general category, there's so many different kinds. For example, there is ilonis, there's trees, tfuas, things that grow in a field, yerokis, there's vegetables, asavim, grass, and the shoyim, b'chol min, and each one of these that were just mentioned, yesh ribi muflig. For example, in trees themselves, ribi otzim, many different kinds of trees, achalukim zemizeh, and they're different one from the other, be'etzem muhusam. In their essence, the trees themselves are different, their fruits are different, what grows on them is different. And the same is with grass. There are different things that have different characteristics in them. That characteristic will have different powers to it. There are some that are masami refuah, they're drugs that bring healing. There's some that are sami mavis, drugs that God forbid could poison. Umarei and v'tivam, the way they appear, the way they look, meaning their form, their color, tivam, their nature. And even in each one individually, there's an incredible amount of different kinds, aden shir, to the point that we can't even count it. And all this huge amount of differences, each and every one has a very unique and specific, precise chayas, which means the life flow, amanhigan, that's leading it, the whole prata inyanov, in all its details, in all its movements, in all its nuances. From the moment it comes out of the earth, adrega echren, until the last moment, sheba kitze, where the end of this plant comes. And that is also a pig zerus ashgacha. Even that is something which depends on how Hashem rules, what should be and how should this be the end of this particular plant that grows. In the cuts of the chermesh, should it be cut by this sort of instrument, umagol yad, lahavi to'elas hanira b'mira habalechayim, and then it's used in a positive way. It's used in a way that it would provide food for animals, or it could be trampled, and that's how it's destroyed, and you don't see any benefit from it once it's destroyed. Or it just comes a point where it just dries up, and as the end of its life. All these details, there's a judgment in heaven, and that's Hashem's unique and specific supervision, how things should be. Each one of these plants that grow has its own nefesh, which means source of life. This is its source of life, and this is what leads it. In fact, every blade of grass has its own form. I think I mentioned this early in the year, that I think scientists say that every blade of grass has its own imprint, just like we have fingerprints, and even though all people have the same 5 fingers, and they all look the same, yet each one has a unique fingerprint, which is incredible. Talking with millions of people, billions of people, and yet each one's print is different. So the same as with grass, there's billions and trillions of blades of grass, but each blade of grass has something unique. Although they all appear to be the same, and they all appear to have the same properties, whatever it is, let's say to bring healing or to do the opposite, but nevertheless, in essence, each one has something unique, and the other one is not totally and completely identical. There's something different. And the reason is that each and every one of them has chayis, as a life flow that's designated specifically and uniquely for that creation. Like the famous quote, there isn't a blade of grass down here, doesn't have an angel up there, that hits it, of course it's a metaphoric way of speaking, and says to the blade of grass, grow, I'm telling you to grow. In other words, the angel is in charge of what's happening with the blade of grass. We're not talking about constellations, we're talking about the spiritual mazel, meaning the angel, which is also could be understood as the nefesh, the soul. There's a soul in it. Soul meaning not like the soul of a person, but some sort of a life force that's in it, and that life force is what makes it grow.
It's the spiritual force of the life force, the nefesh. That's a male nefesh. That's its life force in mind.
Yeah.
Its source.
Right. Now he says the kiyadua, as it's known. The Inyan Hashgacha Pratis. What does it mean that it is a very specific, detailed supervision from Hashem? Shemavai Marina Baal Shem Tov Nishma Seid, and you believe Baal Shem Tov explains it. And he explains something even deeper than what we just said. And that is the Loi Zubulvad. Not only the whole Prati Tnuas and Nevrayim Luminayim, that every detailed movement, every detailed nuance of every creation is Bashgacha Pratis, Mehaber from the Creator. Hashgacha Pratis Halazui Chayes Aniver Kiyumai, and that Hashgacha Pratis, which means, but let's add another thing. Hashgacha Pratis also means not just that Hashem gives it life, that means there's a purpose. Just like every person in the world is here for a purpose, which means when you look at it from the outside, there are, I think 8 billion people in the world today. But really, every single person that's here is because Hashem chose for that person to be in this world, in this time of history. And therefore, every person has a reason why they're here, something positive that they need to accomplish. Yes, we have free choice, so people could mess it up. But generally speaking, it has a purpose. So trees we don't understand it. Why does Hashem need all the trees? Why does he need all the blades of grass? Why does he need the ants? Why does he need the insect? Why does he need things that no one even sees, no one even knows about them? They have a purpose. That purpose is the source of its life. That's why it's here.
The purpose is the source of life?
Yeah. That's the Hashgach, Hashem's purpose and intention Just like we understand with the first, I want Moshe Rabbeinu to be here because he's going to lead the Jewish people out of Golus. The same with every individual. Hashem wants this person to be here because there's something this person has to accomplish. And I guess Hashem gives him 120 years to accomplish that purpose. And this tree has a purpose, and this plant has a purpose, and this animal, this insect has a purpose, and this stone, and this rock, and this grain of sand has a purpose. Everything has a purpose.
What? Which purpose can be to tree or animal?
So I gave an introduction that we have no clue. We don't even know and understand our purpose completely. We know the general purpose, but not the specific purpose. It's beyond human comprehension. We can't keep track of more than 10 things at a time. And we're talking here about infinite. By the way, this is only the physical world. What about the spiritual world with all the angels and everything that's up there? Everything has a purpose. And it's all being controlled all by Hashem himself. He doesn't have secretaries to do it for him. He does it all by himself. So what could be even deeper than that? So Hashem just said there's something even deeper than what we just said. And that is, we're at the last line now on page 120, if you're following the Hebrew. The Tnuah Prati is the Niva Prati, this specific movement and nuance of this specific creation, one little part of the whole universe, Hariesh lo yachas kloli, the klolus kavanas habiyah. It's all part, and it all contributes to the general purpose why Hashem created the world altogether. In other words, it's not just it has a purpose. It's all part of completing the purpose of why Hashem created the entire creation in the first place. Which means that the entire creation in the first place would be incomplete if that bladed grass in Africa wouldn't be where it is. In that spot. And now he explains what he's talking about more specifically. Top of page 121. Let's give an example. Let's take the movements of one blade of grass, that's growing in the depth of a forest. I think the emphasis is in the depth of a forest where people aren't even walking there. Normally, even when we think about plants or objects that are inanimate, or animals, we're always thinking in terms of how that could contribute to us, to our life. Like we are the main purpose in creation are humans, and all these things are things that facilitate us in fulfilling our purpose. What about a blade of grass that's growing somewhere in the depth of the forest where no human being is walking there? Or one of the highest mountains, again, when nobody is walking on that mountain. Or the deepest valleys where no one ever goes there. That no person ever took a walk there. Not only that that the movements of this blade of grass, sometimes the wind blows, it blows to its right. Sometimes it bends to the left. Sometimes it goes forward and sometimes it goes backward. Throughout all the life of this blade of grass, all this is a bi hashgacha pratis, which means Hashem is the one that decreed, and he gave, this is what he wants. That desha pratis said that this individual blade of grass, yichya chadashim yamim v'shayz ktubis, should be alive as a blade of grass lives so many months and so many days and so many hours specific, and during this time, this blade of grass should be moving around to its right and to its left and forward and backward X amount of numbers. So that's how specific Hashgacha Pratis is, which is, look out the window, you look at one tree, and you see leaves over the wing, and you think to yourself, so what, every leaf that's moving, there's a reason why it's moving to the right or to the left or up or down? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And that's one tree. You think about the rest of the world, you get dizzy. Yeah. And what could be the purpose? So it's all, Hashem is infinite, beyond our comprehension. I remember once reading in Tanya, I'll get to it in a second, where it says that a person should remember that Hashem is always watching him, that he says, and he's counting every step that he takes. And I remember thinking, wait, counting every step that he takes. Today we live in a world where people count every step that they take. Every step that they take. Today I did 5,000 steps.
The phone, without us even knowing it, or counting our steps. Sometimes you actually end down somewhere in your settings and it tells you how many steps.
How many steps you took today, right? So imagine you hook up a computer to a tree, it'll tell you how many times it turned to the right and to the left and forward and back. Hashem has these supercomputers up there, and he's able to do all this without a computer. But one of the things that we gain from looking at technology is somehow makes it a little bit more closer to reality to us. When they first came out with radios, with telephones, with television, all the Torah scholars said that this is one of the things that really help us. We've always learned that Hashem sees everything you do, and Hashem hears everything you say, but still, Hashem is Hashem, and I'm doing this quietly, I'm whispering, or I'm doing something in a dark room nobody sees. But today with technology, I can be in a room sitting where all the doors are locked, all the windows are locked, and it could be a little camera there, and so people all over the world could see everything that I'm doing. So here too, it's just something which is overwhelming even to think about it, but that's what Hashgacha Pratis really means.
But what Mashiach found on understand like what the purpose about the thing.
We don't understand everything because we'll still be human, but we understand a little bit better, yeah.
So I know we can't really answer this question, and then your insight, so your free will, so Hashem, Hashem contemplating everything except our free will.
That's the big question. It needs a big rabbi to give a big answer. But basically, so how does it all coincide with free will? Do we mess up Hashem's plan throughout free will? Obviously not. But so far that we'll be talking about things that are not our choices of Torah. And by the way, free will is only, as we said yesterday, choices that pertain to Torah and mitzvahs. Anything else is also not free will, which means everything that's Hashgacha Pratis, the job that I get, or a place that I live, when I do get to buy a house and not get to buy a house, if I miss my train, I get my train, all these things are Hashgacha Pratis. The choice that I make, whether to do something positive or negative, that's where free will comes into the picture. So again, what is he saying here? He's adding not only that these little nuances is all about Hashgacha Pratis, and Hashem has a purpose why it's happening, but to understand the following: Eitzes, Tenuas Hadesha Haprati Alazu, this specific detailed movement of this one single blade of grass has an association and is part of the bigger picture of the whole purpose of creation, which means that by combining all the activities and all the movements of all the details of all the infinite things happening in the world, in all the different kinds and species that exist, all together, that fulfills the ultimate purpose of creation. And then, of course, he concludes that if a person would really think about this deeply and recognize this, how this would help a person in his service to Hashem, that if a blade of grass and a movement, a random movement, which we don't see any purpose in it, to the right, to the left, forward or back, and the amount of movement is Hashgacha Pratis, and this contributes to the ultimate purpose of creation, how much more so we are humans, and Hashem's Hashgacha Pratis is much more, we see it more openly involved in our personal lives, that everything is being run by Hashem, and by observing Torah and doing mitzvahs, we're allowing that purpose of creation and the way Hashem wants things to be in a positive way, I'm allowing those channels to be open and things can happen in that positive way.
By being to listening and seeing it, recognizing it helps us to open the channels.
Right. So the reason why I brought this in is because this is what he's saying here, that not only is Hashem, not only in Shemaim, he's down here, He's down here and is involved in every single detail of the physical world. So it's a little bit different than what Paro was thinking. Paro was thinking he's only up there. Okay, so now let's continue. We're on page 43. I'm starting the second paragraph. And this is what it means when it says, Al tikra machaya ela mahava. I said yesterday we had, I want to show it to you. It's in your siddur, but it's also a pasuk where it says, Ata mechaya eskul, Hashem, you give life to everything in the world. So the Gemara says that when it says that you give life, literally it means life. Giving life means, like it says about Adam in the beginning of creation, first Hashem created an image out of the sand, and then he blew a breath of life into it. When you say Hashem gives life to everything in creation, it also seems to imply there's a creation, and the creation could be without life, and then Hashem blows life into the creation. So the Gemara says these words should be read as not only you give life, but you create. Mahava, b'chol eis b'chol rega. Every second Hashem recreates the world. And this is, as you all know, that this is one of the most basic principles of the Baal Shem Tov and in Tanya. The whole second chapter of Tanya is dedicated to understand this in more depth, that Hashem creates the world every second, yesh mi'ayin. As it says, and we say this in davening, Ubetula, Hashem and His goodness, mechadish b'chol yom tov ma'aseh bereishis. Every day He renews the creation. As it's explained in another source, shebeteva hatev lehetiv. By the way, these words are also a term. We're soon later going to go over the list of the terms that you can underline it now. Teva hatev lehetiv is a term meaning, it means it's the nature, someone who is benevolent. In essence, it's his nature to perform benevolent actions. So Hashem, who is the essence of goodness, in His goodness and His kindness, He created the world to provide the world with the blessing that He gives this world. And He does this every day. The only question is, if we say that Hashem creates the world every second, why does it say that He renews the creation every day? It should say He renews the creation every second. The answer is, even though it says every day, it doesn't necessarily mean every day, excluding that it's not every second. No, it's really b'chol eis, every second. It says in Tanya that if Hashem for one moment would stop sustaining the creation, 1 second, the whole creation would become null and void. So what does it mean when it says every day? Every day you can recognize some sort of a newness in creation. In other words, when you wake up in the morning, at night it's dark, you don't even see what's going on. And in the morning you wake up, the grass is fresh with the dew, and the light is on, you can see things. We ourselves feel refreshed in the morning, not the way we felt last night before we went to sleep. So the world is sort of refreshed openly every day, but really it's happening every second. Page 45. In order to emphasize and to sort of reinforce what he said before. What he said before was that Hashem Elokim, everything is Hashem Himself. There's nothing else. Bir achar kach, ein oid. And after that, he says the word ein oid. There's nothing else. Shein shum oid, which means there's not even something that sort of is assisting Hashem in one way or another. As if to say Hashem created the world and He's running everything, but also with these constellations and also on some level, some degree of authority. There's nothing. This is called shituf. We won't go into it. We're going to learn about it later in a different minor. So we'll leave it here for now. But it means, like we gave the example the other day of a waiter who brings food to the table and you say thank you to him, which means even though in general, the waiter is not the one that's providing the food, it's the owner that's providing the food, and he's the one who set up this whole party. But the waiter has a little bit of an input. It can make it more pleasant or less pleasant. So therefore, perhaps that's the way it is. Now, I just want to add that we're talking about gods and constellations, but really it applies to us as well. In what way? The laws of nature. How much trust do we have in the laws of nature? That things are naturally a certain way. And because of that, we believe things will happen or they won't happen. And are we trusting exclusively that it's all about Hashem? Now the biggest part of the challenge is because Hashem wants us to do things in the natural order and follow the rules as it is in the natural order. At the same time, to trust in Him. So if I want things to grow in the field, I can't go into my field, sit down on a chair, say Tehillim, and just say, now I'm waiting for the apple tree to grow, I'm waiting for the vegetables to grow. I said Tehillim. It didn't happen yet, just say more Tehillim. Still didn't happen, say more Tehillim. That was not going to work. And it's not my own idea. It's Hashem says you have to plant seeds to make things grow. And that makes us perceive it as if the natural reasons are the reasons why it's happening. But at the same time, no, you should know that it's coming from Hashem. So if a person gives too much trust to the natural reasons, that also is a form of not recognizing that Hashem is involved in the details of the physical. It's as if Hashem gave over a little bit of the authority to nature. That's what people speak. Nature did this and Mother Nature did that, as if there's some sort of a force called nature and that's responsible. But that would be, if a person really believes that, it's a subtle kind of lack of belief in how Hashem is really one and He's really in charge of everything. Of course, there are practical ramifications of that. We'll go into that later. Okay, we can pray this to everybody again. A successful day. Let's meet. Really meet that. Thank you. You know, we'll hold on to that Shgacha Pratis sheet if you need time for meditation. It'll help you. Oh, yeah, many people don't
I got that like Cheshvan vibes going on. Yeah, tomorrow. Oh, today's Thursday. I woke up this morning and I thought today was Friday. I thought yesterday was Friday. Where was the last night? I'm like, okay, tomorrow's Friday. We know I need to find my shopping today, but it wasn't enough. And he's like, wait, no, I've got to hold it. Okay, time for a lot. Excited. We didn't have a lump on this? Huh? You saying for a lump? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Is it? Grab it. It's relevant.